Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're doing well. Nisse and Kalle Sauerland. Let's talk about them because they're feeling very smug. They took to Twitter to announce a huge, colossal success for Harlem Eubank, who's one of their fighters. His recent fight against Timo Schwarzkopf, apparently garnered 2 million views on Channel 5. And it got me thinking because 2 million is obviously a lot of people. And Channel 5 is a small terrestrial channel. It's not one of the main ones. It's not the BBC. It's not ITV. Channel 5, it's not renowned for its, shall we say, more cultured programming. And of course, the boxing wasn't on in prime time. I think it started at 10 or 11, probably 9 or 10. But they got 2 million viewers, and they think this is fantastic. This is apparently the biggest single audience for boxing in the UK this year, according to Nisse and Kalle. And this kind of raises the question, because I have always been mystified why promoters, leading promoters, not just the small hall guys, why they don't utilise terrestrial television more, because of the obvious figures that you can garner. Now, I'm not saying, I understand the arguments about, well, the big guys, they want to be on pay-per-view. You won't get Fury or Joshua on Channel 5 or ITV or BBC because they just don't have the money to compete with pay-per-view. And, DAZN have got, they're throwing hundreds of millions of pounds at boxing, and then you've got, Sky and so on. Okay, I get that. But look, if you've got young fighters who you are looking to build up into big stars, who you are looking to get their name out there, build up their, if you want to use that stupid phrase, brand, what better way to do it than through, the outlet that gets you the maximum amount of eyes on him or her? Why on earth would you tuck away a prospect on an undercard, on a platform where the amount of people watching is going to be minimal, certainly very minimal compared to terrestrial television? So I don't understand why promoters don't, I'll give you a few examples, why they don't have deals with ITV and BBC, and then with their young fighters put them on for, say, British title fights, maybe even the odd European one here and there. The next gen cards, for example, that DAZN do. Wouldn't they be great on terrestrial television? You'd get all these people seeing these young fighters coming up. And then when they moved over to DAZN or Sky, maybe some of them hit pay-per-view, pay dirt, then a lot of the people who'd watched them on terrestrial television will say, okay, I'll subscribe to DAZN, I'll subscribe to TNT Sports, I'll subscribe to Sky Sports. Now, there's a precedence for this, because a lot of people forget that Naseem Hamed, certainly a fighter who transcended the sport and made, many, many millions, he started off on terrestrial television and then he switched to Sky. And a lot of people forget this. And he rode on the back of the success of the middleweights and the super middleweights of the late 80s and early 90s. The two obvious ones being Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. Now, just to give you an idea of the sort of figures they were pulling in at their peak, the rematch between Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. had 16.5 million people watching it in Britain alone, just in Britain. The fight, which by the way is the best fight I've ever seen, between Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan, had 13 million people watching it. When I mentioned the 16.5 million for Eubank Senior and Benn, their rematch, that remains to this day ITV's most watched sports event. Second is the 1990 match between England and the Republic of Ireland, Italia 90. And third is another boxing match. Can you guess what it is? I'll tell you. It's Frank Bruno against Joe Budner, White Hart Lane, 1987. Okay. Now, how did these fighters, Bruno, Benn, Eubank, Hamed, how did they get such colossal figures on terrestrial television? Because the sport was built up in clear view of everyone in Britain. If you were interested in boxing, or if you just had a curiosity about it, you didn't have to pay subscriptions, pay-per-view. No. You had your TV licence, you got a telly, and that was your lot. Okay? So there was none of this, I've got to subscribe to TNT, and then, I've got to pay through the nose for this pay-per-view, and there's all these different things, there's all these different channels, and if I want to watch my box, I've got TNT, Sky, DAZN, and it. No, there was none of that. It was kept very, very simple. And again, I know this is a different era. I understand that model isn't going to work today because we've got, don't forget, in satellite telly, Sky TV in Britain came along, I want to say 89, 90, that sort of time. I'm not exactly sure of the year. I'm not offhand, I'll have to look it up. So we're talking about, McClellan and Benn fought in 95. The rematch between Eubank and Benn was 94. 91 was the first fight. Then you had, again, another one that was very successful, which was on terrestrial telly, apart from the first Eubank Senior Benn fight, was Michael Watson and Nigel Benn, where Watson knocked out Benn in 6 rounds in the Big Tent at Finsbury Park. That was a massively successful. That had big viewing figures. I don't know what they were offhand, but they were. So these fighters started off, and they started off on undercards of terrestrial shows, and gradually they were built up and built into stars in a terrestrial sense. Now, again, I'm getting back to the point I was making a moment ago. I understand it's a different model, but can't you do that? Can't you somehow, if you're a promoter, utilise that massive platform for your youngsters to build them up, to get their names out there, to get them known? Joe Calzaghe is another one who started on terrestrial television. Initially, people forget this. Joe Calzaghe was initially signed to Mickey Duff, and then he switched to Frank Warren, and it was terrestrial TV. I remember him watching him win the British title. I can't remember the guy's name. Mark, someone. He had a brother who was a light heavyweight. I think the brother's doing a life sentence for murder or something like that. I can't remember his name. Anyway, I remember that. That's a British title fight. And some of these cards were kind of stacked with British talent. So if I was in promotion, I would be very, very interested in utilising terrestrial TV as a springboard, if you like, for my younger fighters. Like, your Campbell Hattons, for example. If they want to see how far Campbell Hatton's going to go, I don't think he'll particularly go very far. But, for example, he's got the name. So immediately people are going to go, oh, it's Ricky Hatton's son. Yeah, I'll tune into that. And when they tune into that on terrestrial telly, suddenly they're like, oh, I might as well watch these other 3, 4, 5 fights, whatever it is. Oh, you know what? I quite like boxing. I think I'll watch it again. That's how things grow. Women's boxing. It's flying. Put some of that on terrestrial telly. People might go, oh, women boxing. Oh, I ain't seen that before. Because, people who are casuals, who aren't really big on boxing, they might be sitting there. Okay, yeah, I'll give that a look. This is how things grow. So, I think an opportunity is being missed here. I really do. I've always thought this. And I'm not saying that, the ultimate holy grail isn't going to be pay-per-view for fighters, because that's where you make most of the money, or maybe a big contract to go on DAZN or TNT or Sky. I mean, I understand those are big platforms and they generate a lot of money. They throw a lot of money into boxing. But to start with, to sort of learn the ropes, if you like, and to build up your brand, what better way to do it than on terrestrial television? And it's being completely neglected. Maybe not completely, because of course you've got Harlem Eubank. He was in Brighton. It's a big show. 2 million people watched it on telly. Now a lot more people, thanks to that broadcast know who Harlem Eubank is. Harlem Eubank, is he Chris Eubank Jr.? So, oh no, he's us. Oh, he's his nephew, is he? Okay, because they're watching it and they're seeing Senior there, and he's this is my nephew, and you know, Uncle Big Chris and all this. You know, I mean, this is how stories get told, and the public like a story. That's why your Hameds, your Benns, your Eubanks, they became massive stars because people followed them from early on. I remember seeing a very young Nigel Benn fight on an undercard against a guy called Winston Burnett, old journeyman. Did think he did 100 fights eventually, Winston Burnett. Didn't win many, but he was a good, tough guy. He fought Nigel twice, actually. And I had already heard of Nigel Benn. Why? Because I've seen that guy on TV. I saw him on TV, yeah, I remember him, yeah. And, do you see what I mean? And I watched it live, but, so when I went live, I was like, oh, yeah, I recognise. I said to my grandfather who I was with, I said, I know that guy, watch out for him, he's going to be something. And he was. But anyway, just a few thoughts on terrestrial telly. Leave your thoughts below. Do you think it can work? How would you fit it in with the bigger picture? Yeah, give me your thoughts. I'm looking forward to reading them. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, you could subscribe. That would be a great thing. Please hit the like button as well, if you don't mind. And of course, I'll answer your comments. And until next time, take care and bye for now.